Well, hello again, all my YouTube subscribers, and thanks once more for tuning in to my world of classic dirt bikes. Now, in this featured video, we are going to take a look at another machine from the Colin Lee's vintage dirt bike collection. This is Colin's 1980 CCM 250 Hiro. Now, just before Colin purchased this bike and restored it to this beautiful condition, there is a bit of a story behind this particular build, so if you just please bear with me, I'll bring you up to speed. Now, this featured 1980 bike started its life as a brand new machine which was purchased by Peter Bland in early 1980 when he traded in his Moto Villa 380 in part exchange for this brand new CCM 250 Hiro. The bike was bought from Dave Muxlow Motorcycles in Longlands, Middlesbrough in the UK for the princely sum of £1,400, which of course in 1980 was quite a decent amount of money for its time. Nevertheless, Peter rode this machine most of the 1980 season, right up until the time he then damaged his knee racing at a local scramble event at Woodhouse Farm in Great Ayton. After a brief healing process, Peter then tried to race the bike again near the end of the 1980 season, but he soon realised that his original knee injury was still not 100%. The CCM Hiro was then confined to a corner of Peter's workshop, where it then lay undisturbed for the next 5 years. Now, during the next 30 or 35 years or so, various amateur attempts at stripping and rebuilding this machine were attempted without much success until Colin Lee purchased the bike in 2017 with a view to restoring it to its former glory. Now, when Colin first purchased this bike, his intention was to do a complete restoration of the entire machine, so everything was dismantled right down to the bare frame, including the entire running internals of the little Italian Hiro motor. Now, CCM opted to use these Italian Hiro engines in their 1980 machines rather than the older BSA engines they had built their entire business plan on. Now, the reason was mainly because at the time CCM had a contact through legendary UK trials rider Sammy Miller, who was developing these Hiro engines with a view to eventually using them in various different types of trials chassis. And so Clues utilised these engines in the 1979 and 1980 125 and 250 versions of the CCM mark. Now, Colin's little Hiro engine was of course completely rebuilt, regardless of what condition the actual internals were in. Colin changed about everything for new, and that included main bearings, seals, gaskets and every other thing he thought needed done. Now, the cylinder barrel was also replated and a new piston ring fitted, as the piston and crank were still in surprisingly good condition considering its age. Now, of course, naturally the CCM chassis, swing arm and these front forks were all stripped of the old CCM paint, repainted and then bolted back together to form the chassis. Now, this beautiful original CCM fuel tank did have some damage when Colin first purchased the bike, but naturally the paint was stripped completely back, the damage was repaired, and then Colin repainted the tank and fitted these lovely CCM decals. Now, the seat was recovered using the original base and foam, and Evo Motocross came up trumps by supplying an original replacement seat cover which Colin then painstakingly stitched onto the original base. Now, the original Hiro exhaust and tailpipe were in surprisingly good condition considering the years of abuse the bike had suffered, and this only required prepping and then painting to make it once again as good as new. Of course, on the 79 bike, the exhaust was fitted to the right hand side of the bike. This was of course changed to the left side of the bike in 1980. Now, in the rear suspension department, the older CCMs had Olin shocks fitted as standard, but in 1980 this would then be upgraded to a pair of these very high quality white power twin shock units with remote reservoirs. Now, of course, these white power rear shocks on the 1980 model were seen as a much better improvement over the previous 79 model. Now, many of the other parts used in the build of this machine are all basically original CCM Hiro parts from 1980, and this particular bike still has its original CCM wheels, which are a very rare thing to find on a bike from 1980. Now, many of the smaller items used to complete the build of this very nice little machine, including the handlebars, the throttle gasser, cables and grips, etc., are all standard 1980 CCM parts. But since 1980, this little motorcycle has been through quite a torrid life and has been stripped and unprofessionally rebuilt many times in the past. But it is now thanks to Colin's expertise that he has now rescued another rare little gem from the Clues motorcycle dynasty. But what is more, to give you an idea of just how rare these iconic bikes are, there were only 27 of these Hiro machines manufactured by CCM in 1980. This video was brought to you in association with VMX Magazine, the world's #1 publication for all your classic and vintage dirt bike motorcycles.